Welcome to the Coaching Index podcast. Honest conversations between coaches, practical insights, knowledge, ideas, impact.
My first question for you is, what is your journey into soccer? From playing to coaching to your leadership role now, what have you done? And how has it got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, like most Americans growing up in the 90s, I started playing soccer because a friend's team didn't have enough players at the time. His dad was coaching an AYSO team. I think I was in second grade. And so they were just like, hey, we need to fill out this team. So I joined, very limited instructions, but I got to play all the time. I was always on the field during games. I started helping out my brother's team because my mom signed him up as well. He was an age group above me. So I was playing like 2 games a weekend, training 4 times a week. I started really just enjoying it. And I think a year later, one of the other kids in the program, they were playing a club team that wasn't far away from my house. So the dad went up to my mom and was just like, hey, we need to get this kid playing in a club. It was the first time being in a little bit more of an organized environment. And it was nerve wracking because I started going out and it was a very good team. In I think 5th grade, I saw the forward rainbow flick a center back and then finish it on a half volley. And I was like, you can do that with a ball. How do I get to do that? So I think the jump from AYSO to club was a big one for me, but it kind of encouraged me to see a different side of the game I hadn't seen before, where I started watching the Mexican League on Telemundo a lot more frequently. I didn't speak a lick of Spanish at the time, but I was starting to learn it from the kids I was playing with, and then watching the game. So that was my biggest jump and kind of like surprise of like, you can do unbelievable stuff with this ball. And it really engaged with me of being like, you can be super creative in this sport than, the American sports I was playing beforehand, like baseball. There's not much trick stuff or fancy things you can start doing. So soccer really hit my kind of like imagination, my creativity. So continued playing on, went out, played in high school, had somewhat of a negative experience with coaches at that time, in which, heard a lot of negative feedback, a lot of criticisms at moments where it started making me not enjoy the game as much. I started kind of dreading going out to training my senior year. Senior year club was a bit tough because we'd start getting like 9 kids to show up at games. And we were playing in a very hard competitive division, and I was starting to get burnt out at that point. So once I went off to college, I decided not to play my freshman year. I went to school. And then over a period of like maybe about 6 months, some of my friends were like, hey, let's just go take a ball down to the field and just kick it around for a bit. And so we started doing that. Eventually, it started actually making a campus unofficial pickup league that we started kind of just holding. It was just like we'd start playing, more people would start coming and looking out the dorms and come down and want to play. So we started playing pickup, I think, twice a week in the middle of the afternoon. And that kind of really ignited me to want to go play 11-a-side again. So I started finding the schools club team, adult leagues in the area. And I kind of found that spark again to want to engage with it. As I got towards the end of my college career of being a student and not really the student athlete playing the competitive high level team, but playing on my own, I was playing with a few different teams, and one guy just needed a coach at an AYSO program. They were short-handed. He just sent out an email, and I was like, hey, man, I got nothing going on. I'll show up. Had no idea what I was doing at the time. The other coach gave me a lesson plan. I was like, hey, man, like, I haven't really coached ever. I can help keep the equipment nice and organized. I can help kind of facilitate things in between, but like I'm really here to learn from you. And, you know, I feel like now looking back on it was kind of starting to learn where my voice was going to be as a coach, and be able to find that confidence in what I was saying to the kids, and not just earn their respect, but make them understand that I'm there to respect them, and give them a space to enjoy and challenge themselves. So yeah, started an AYSO program. Soon got into doing summer camps. That was all levels, abilities. I was going off to different cities and stuff doing it. So I was starting to get into different cultures. I'm from Chicago, so I grew up in a very large city. And then I started going off into these really small towns in Michigan, starting to get to know a little bit more about the Midwest outside of what I had seen. Started doing that. They kept me around for a while, and I started getting the opportunity to do some like special events with them, in which we got to do some really cool events with Adidas, Walgreens, and like Coca-Cola. That was like run up stuff to the World Cup, where we got to see all these like celebrity players. Alex Morgan was the big name that, at the time all the kids wanted to meet. So I got to do these just random, really cool stuff. Which was really lucky for me. But I feel like those early experiences were like, hey, there's a lot to this, that is exciting and entertaining, but also like I really engaged with all the stuff I was doing on the field. I got to meet a lot of unique kids, people, and be able to enjoy that. So doing camps, doing these special event things, and then I got a recommendation to run a community program. No names were given to me at the time. It was just, hey, we need someone to come in and help develop and run a community league. We're building a brand new pitch for it in Chicago. And I was like, okay, like I'd love to take this on. It was free after school care. So I get on a call with this guy from New York, and one of my earlier mentors, Paul Jeffries. And he's like, hey, yeah, so we're developing a community program run by Manchester City. All we're looking to do is run, 4-hour-and-a-half training sessions a week. That is it. And we're wanting to work with the local schools to provide free after school care. And I was just like, wow, like I had no idea that this was going to be, one of those programs that was kind of like a brand name, but like well supported and funded. I thought it was going to be an after school program where, it was just going to be, organizing stuff like that. But like they really did bring a lot for those kids in that time. And it showed me the other side of the game, which, right now I'm in club. It's a pay to play part, but I saw the part where it was about the kids being engaged with the game. And that's definitely something I've taken on from there, is just making sure that there's a space and a place for everyone to be able to engage with the game and give them that support to, travel and a lot of the expenses that come with the club now. Is how can we help those people out so they don't get pushed out of it? So got really lucky, ran a community program for 3 years. We took it from 6 players our launch year. It was actually a family. It was like 3 brothers and sisters, and then their cousins were all playing. So learned a lot of managing a family, being on the same pitch at the same time, because they were always squabbling and arguing with each other, and learned a lot more of being patient and trying to understand why they were upset about something instead of just trying to punish kids at that time. But we definitely had a really good program there. Ended with 120 kids. Saw a lot of kids just enjoying the game, being engaged, starting to help them get into some other programs like AYSO and some clubs in the area. From my time doing that, the DOC, now the executive of our club, came down, just heard about this program, came down, was watching this session from afar, just kind of observing. And at the end, he came up and started talking to me. And, he started asking me a little bit more questions about, hey, do you want to come work in a club program? And, not taking my coaching to the next level, but are you a little bit more serious of, going on within your coaching journey? So once we talked for a while, I started doing some smaller programs with him. I already was enrolled on my C license as a community coach, and so I also was like, okay, I need to do some filming and stuff like this. So this is going to be helpful for me to get those 2 filming sessions that you needed to have on your C license completed. So I went off, ended up joining the club. And I mean, my journey with the club has been, I've been with my club for 10 years now. There's been obviously ups and downs throughout seasons, different players that you work with, different teams. But I think that early on within my first club experience, it was about going around and taking as much information as I could. And how can I apply it to help my development, my team's development, or individual players' development, from a variety of things of, session setup. How can I set my session to make it as fluid and cohesive as possible for the players just getting in? They see the field, they can go, right, I can kind of get an idea of what we're doing today. Going into the actual activities and how are you coaching in it? We get the toolbox from those that go through U.S. Soccer's education, but really just starting to see how do other coaches use different moments within their training session to interact and work with players. I mean, I know as a young coach, I always loved the freeze. I always loved to jump in there and try and get all of my coaching knowledge out there for the kids. And I start slowly learning a lot during that time of like, can I coach a lot more in the flow? So this way the game doesn't get chopped up and broken up. I can always just walk in and start talking to a kid on the side, or even pull that kid off and give them a few bits of information, get them to think about something and then put them back in. But I think in my early coaching adventure as a club coach, it was steal as much as I could. How can I steal things? How does it apply to me? And don't be afraid to make mistakes, because there are definitely a lot of mistakes that help me get over that initial uneasiness or inability to take information and use it correctly. I was like, right, that didn't work. How can I change this and manipulate it? Or is this just something I need to scrap altogether? But yeah, initially got in at club, started stealing a bunch of stuff and trying to use it. And then since then I've been pretty fortunate with working with our pre-professional programs on the women's side, and then also starting to work with academy teams, in which now, I've worked a lot more on technical ideas earlier on in my coaching career. Now it's starting to get a lot more into the tactical side. How can I implement certain things for the players to understand it and then demonstrate it later, whether it's a game or a training session?
Dude, there's so much to unpack from that. That was absolutely amazing. So one of the biggest things I wrote down everything you said, and I have questions all about it because that was
Go for
awesome. So the first question for me, and I think you're the same kind of coach as me. Our coaching philosophy is pretty much the same, and it's all about environment. And the player, the players have to be in the right and correct environment. Even before we started recording the voice stuff, we talked about that and tryouts and making sure people are in the right place. So you talked about you loved engaging kids, and in the game. How do you do that as a coach now? And maybe what would you say to a new coach? And like, what's the best thing to do to engage players for your teams?
Yeah, I think one of the tools that I learned from the 13, 14 plus years of coaching now is getting to know the person before getting to know the player. The player you're going to be able to see on the field. What is their athletic profile like? Where are they at in their technical ability? How do they see and process and try and play the game? Those are all stuff that you can sit there, watch a scrimmage, watch a training session, watch a game, but really engaging and getting to know who they are as a person is probably one of the biggest steps in getting kids engaged and bought into, whatever you're getting them involved into. So one of the things I always make sure I'm doing is, as kids are showing up, especially that very first week, is I already look through if I'm getting a new team, I'm already looking through the roster, trying to look at pictures on our platform that we have of, I can kind of look and I'm like, all right, well, that kind of looks like this kid, this kind of, so I kind of have some names going around, but once they get in, I'm walking over and introducing myself. I have my whole session set up. I'm making sure that as kids are getting in, I'm always going over and saying hi, introducing myself. Ask them some filler questions of, hey, how was your day? What were you up to? I like talking about food. So usually I'll ask them like, hey, what'd you have for lunch earlier today? But then after that, it's during those small moments, trying to engage with the kids a little bit more and find out more about them. Do they have a pet at home? Do they have another side activity that they do that they really enjoy? Last year, I had a girl who was very good at fencing. She actually was going to national competitions and was, coming home with some massive trophies. But like that was one of the things where, I just kind of took a moment where I was like, hey, like, what else do you do on your weekends? What else do you, enjoy to do? And she told me so much about fencing that like now if I watch the Olympics, I feel like I'd have a little bit more of an understanding of what's going on. But taking that moment, not only let her kind of express something that she enjoyed to me, I start seeing a different side of her where, fencing's a lot about strategy. So I know I could kind of pick her brain a little bit more during team talks about, hey, this is what we're seeing. What do you see? And, she was spot on a lot of times with the way that she was able to information back. But like for me, if you want to get the kids engaged, like I any type of player I work with, I want to make sure that when they're out there, they're going to give 100%. So I try and find out where their 100% is and what also makes them tick that isn't soccer. The kids that are more social, can I try and get them a little bit more bought into the team environment side? In the other case of, you have a kid who is a little bit more driven for their own development. How can I start targeting them a little bit more in games and training for them to hit certain goals that they can do by themselves? But yeah, I'd say the big one is trying to make sure you engage with the person that you're coaching and start taking those little bits to help you coach them later. It's a very easy skill to have, but I think it's something that, sometimes we feel like on the field we don't have enough time. But it really just steal those small moments and you can hopefully see a difference of the player that you're working with then.
Yeah. No, I love it. So part of my question for this is when you talked about it and you talked about that early years in coaching, you talked about that there was a person that helped you find your confidence and learn your voice, is the words that you said. There's lots of coaches. Obviously, we teach the grassroots courses, so we kind of see these coaches all the time. But there's a lot of coaches that don't know how to find their voice and are worried about perception and different things like that. Not everyone's as confident, especially as you. But what my question for you is you were talking about it in your thing, but how has the coaching education helped you, and how did it help you grow and find that confidence? Because there's a lot of conversations about what the coach education should look like, what should we teach, what are the right things. How did it help you in your journey to get to where you are now? Because you spoke about, you didn't really mention it much until then all of a sudden, you said about your C license, and then it just kind of blew up from there about how it really helped you. So how did it help you?
Yeah, I mean, the coaching courses, there's obviously a hot debate with a lot of coaches of whether or not that's stuff that they need to go through. And for me, the first one is, I get to meet people like yourself where, we got along really well, but it wasn't just because we were in the same group. We kind of saw the game the same way. We had very similar personalities where I feel like if we were in a club, like we'd probably be coaching within the same group of teams because it was like we could get along really well. But like beyond just those connections, um I think a lot of the times, like the U.S. coaching courses are meant to kind of make you uncomfortable, and it kind of sets us back into that status of being a player again, right? The game never gives the same situation two times. They're similar situations, but they're never the same exact situation. So for us to get kids to grow, we need to make them sometimes uncomfortable and push them outside of that comfort zone. It's the same thing that the coaching courses do. They want to see you grow and learn. Now the confidence side is you might get that homework assignment back with the green light, and you're just like, yes, I got this one down, or you get a yellow, and you're like, well, I need to rethink this. But I mean, I think the confidence really comes from being on the field with those other coaches and being able to show what you've been working on, and then getting that feedback from the coaches that you're working with, and then try and come back and do it a little bit better the next time. But yeah, I mean, overall, like they're meant to make you uncomfortable, and there's a reason for it. You need to grow, you need to learn. I got onto my license recently. I'm very nervous about that, but like it's one of those things where I'm ready for that next journey, ready to challenge and see where I am as a coach and where can I continue to grow. So I think that might be another bit of it is like you see yourself grow. So you're like, hey, I started here, and it's a little bit more of a snapshot than those of us that have been coaching for over 10 years. You're like, you look back and you're like, I wonder what my session plans looked like back then. It was probably a hot mess at that time, and I only can imagine what type of information I was giving the kids, but like that was part of my development and my learning. But now it's kind of to take that measuring stick again and see where can I take my next steps in my own development.
Yeah. So my biggest thing from the courses that I've learned, and I've actually put this down to something that I hate that they've taken out of it, is the mentorship and talking about connections. So obviously we've been going through the new system, the grassroots, and the biggest slide I think I spent the most time on was the one about the page of experience and talking about who's your mentor, who's going to help you in your own environment. Every person I've had on this podcast, we talked about mentorship and those connections. For you, what's the most important thing in finding a mentor, and then how do you use a mentor? Because I think everyone can find someone that they look up to and someone that they respect and they can get these answers. But like, how do you use that mentor? Because I think that's the part that's undervalued. Because you ask someone, you're like, okay, yeah, my mentor is Michael Jordan, right? But like, how do you use that to help you get better? Who are your
Yeah.
mentors, and how do you, or what kind of questions do you ask, or what about you? Because you're obviously a mentor for some people. Like, what questions do you get asked? What are the right things to ask a mentor?
Yeah. I mean, in general, it's kind of like looking for a mentor or seeking one out. It's kind of, again, finding a personality that you can get along with and someone who's not afraid to challenge you at moments, in the correct way of challenging you. So like, again, yeah, would everyone love to have, let's just throw out Pochettino? Would people love to have Pochettino as a mentor? Absolutely. But is it relevant to your level at that time or where you want to go? Because that I feel like that's one of the first two things to kind of think about is, I've really enjoyed development and the youth game. So for me to look for a mentor that's doing the college level or higher may not be helpful to me at that point. But if I want to get there, yeah, maybe I need to go out and find someone who has those experiences. But so I'd say take those first two bits in to measure out, what am I looking for in a mentor? And then it's about going and, if it's at a tournament, if it's at games on the weekend, probably just seeing them coach as a person. And because I think that's the biggest thing. We all can be smiles and handshakes before a whistle, but then once the whistle goes, I'm sure you've seen a few coaches where it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Because it's a different experience for them at that point. But I think going and seeing them coach is definitely something that's going to help you understand if that person can help you. And then being on the side of being a mentor. I remember at one point I was really stressed with, I think it was in the middle of a winter season. We were ramping up for tryouts at some point. I had a bunch of programming next year stuff that I had to get done. And a guy who's at our club who, he calls, we have conversations all the time. From little game moments to kind of bigger life things. He'll kind of bring me and just be like, hey, I got this question. He came to me in the office one day where I was pretty stressed out, kind of running on little sleep, and he asked me a question and I gave him an answer. And later that day, I was driving and kind of I used my drives to reflect and think about, different experiences I've had, if it's a session or a game or such as, conversations in the office. And I realized I didn't actually help him by giving him an answer at that time, because he wasn't growing and learning from it. He heard a definitive from me that this is how it should be. And that made me rethink a lot about how I worked with anyone when they came and asked me for some help, of being, how can I get them to think about it and they create that decision themselves by just giving them some resources. And I think that as being, someone who helps other people in the coach education, other stuff, it really helped me kind of grow as a person of being like, if I'm providing answers, there's just going to be 100 Ryans running around, and Lord knows that that's going to be a horrible world at some point. There's going to be some nice beards going around, but beyond that, I don't know about what else. Where it helped me grow to understand that he is coming for answers, but it helps a lot more if he's the one who figures it out, because then he's going to have growth and learning that happens along the way. So that really challenged me of like, when I'm talking to people now, of thinking about like, hey, what are they asking for? How can I give them something that's going to help them at the end of it? Now, if someone needs to find out, directions to a field, I'm not going to give them questions to figure that out. But it's giving them the resources to be able to grow and learn. Because I'm not sure about yourself, when I can sit around and play with something for a while and kind of know the ins and outs of it, I'm excited by it. But now I kind of know a little bit more of those gray areas around that answer. There's a while ago, I had a conversation with coaches about goal kicks, because I'm not sure about you. A lot of people either have the goalie take it, and they take it from one side to the other and it's easy to read the play, or they have a center back take it and it's on the sides and it's very directional. So I challenged myself at one point where I was like, how can I make it where goal kicks are not as easily readable? Well, have the center back take it and play the goalkeeper. You now have to press, and it allows us a way to play out instead of just playing left or right. But because I sat there and played with it, I started getting more insights behind why, how. I try to challenge myself. How would I stop myself at that point? But it's one of those things where if you get really invested and involved with something, you're going to see much more than just that direct answer. And that's something I want to give other people. I want them to be able to get excited, start looking at different avenues, and learn the ins and outs of whatever they're trying to, get to at the end.
I haven't brought this up in any of the conversations, but you said this word twice, is reflection. And I think that's such an underrated tool to use. And I think as coaches, we don't do it enough. And even a conversation like this is a good reflection. But what you said, your drive, as a good reflection tool. I want to know, why do you reflect? What do you as a coach reflect on?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm definitely one of those people. I heard this from another podcast a really long time ago where here's a guy talking about coaching and that it is a never-ending process, right? It just is. The game's always changing. You're going to get different people that you're going to be working with. Um, a lot of things are always changing as you continue to coach, and if you're not growing with it, well, you're going to become stagnant and it's going to be bad. But if you feel like you've figured everything out, write a book, just write a book, and then you can move on and do something else that's going to challenge you. And like, I heard that and I was like, yeah, no, that's it. Mitchell's going to write a book now. Um, but that's one of the things that made me kind of think about early on in my coaching experience was like, how am I going to consistently grow? And when I first started, I had people that I looked up to as mentors. I'd kind of go to them, but they didn't always challenge me to think a little bit more on things. So I think that I just started developing um, kind of a reflection within myself of, I finish a training session. I would just try and think of, what was my highlight of that training session? Of the kids learning, what was my highlight of my interactions with them, and then on the opposite end, what was something I wanted to improve for the kids learning, and what was something I wanted to improve within my actions. Because again, like, your actions are the only things you can control. So I started thinking in that sense, probably in my second or third year of coaching club, um, where I kind of had a little bit more of a handle on running training sessions, things like that. And I was like, all right, let's keep pushing the needle on my self developing. So start off with reflections. It's pretty easy if you if you travel for club soccer, you usually have like a 30-minute car ride. Hopefully not more than that, but occasionally it's a 2-hour car ride where you're driving home. But I just try and think of those 4 points because at the end of the day, it's going to impact my development, and then it's always going to then trickle down and impact the player's development. I'd say nowadays with being able to have access to videos and stuff, you can record your training session. You can mic yourself up, listen to yourself speak. Are the words you're saying words that you've been reinforcing throughout your training session, or if your club methodology has vocabulary for you to use, are you using it correctly and consistently? But those tools now can really help push a lot more modern coaches further a little bit quicker, because you can't hide the evidence on an audio recording or a video recording. Like that information it's not changing. So like, I'd say for coaches nowadays, you have a pretty good reflection tool to be able to access if you have those things. But if you don't, it's that car ride. You get in the car, you think about your impact as a coach at that moment, because it will help you as you kind of go along, especially in the early days of starting as a youth soccer coach.
I started to record myself in the car, like not FaceTime or anything, but like just the conversation with myself. And it probably people driving past me probably thought I was just weird and just singing into the radio. But like, after a game, I would be like, okay, let's analyze that game, and I would talk about it. And then I realized after listening, if I listen to it again in 24 hours, I've said so many things there that are not important at all. That I get to reflect and be like, okay, well, that didn't matter. That didn't matter. Okay, next week I need to focus on this. And I think that's such a good tool, and like that's why I kind of pushed for that answer, because the car journey is super important. I want to ask you a question because I've been teaching grassroots courses all summer like crazy. In Utah, we just need a lot of them, and so I'm actually doing one tonight as well. But the question I had last week that I didn't know how to ask, and I'm going to see him again tonight, and I'd love to pick your brain, is about leadership. And I'm talking about club
Mhm.
leadership, because a lot of people don't realize that they're there to support you. And there's some leadership out there that maybe isn't as strong as others. But what are some things, you're in a leadership role, so what are some things that a leadership can help you with, maybe as a new coach? Because a lot of times they're like, I don't know where to get this, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do this. And we talk about finding mentors, but also about your club leadership's there to help you and guide you and help your club succeed. What are some things that you do with your coaches that can help guide them when they're in trouble? What questions maybe you wish that your coaches asked you? You're like, hey, I'm here to support you, just for these newer coaches.
Yeah, I mean, don't ever be afraid to ask a question. If you don't know the answer, like, just ask someone. Um, when I started stepping more into a leadership role, I thought about my first year as a club coach because I went from the recreation side of that community program into club coaching. And most of the other coaches, the one other coach I was hired that year, he was already a club coach for several years. And then everyone else there was already part of the club and known stuff. So my very first week of starting up was a tournament weekend. And this was before the digital check-in was happening. So we had to have our state roster, our tournament roster, and some other type of game card printed off from the website. I didn't know where that information was. I had asked a few people and they kind of gave yeah, it's on the website. And I'm like, well, what website? And so like within my stepping into a leadership role, I started thinking about what was it like in my first year of being a club coach and how can I help people get over some of those early hurdles. Like we've used orientations before where it's a week-long thing where we have social stuff where, we'll have pickup games. We'll usually end the week with going out for dinner together as a staff, and doing some bigger events. But during those, I ran through a checklist of like, hey, where did I stumble right away? And the biggest one is usually your administrative stuff, using whatever platform you have, using getting all the documents and stuff. So like we handled that, but within other things that come along, within a leadership group, it's the leadership group needs to first of all be approachable. There was a while where at our club we had a lot of the leadership group sitting in the boardroom, which is disconnected from our main offices. And so like last year, I kind of noticed that without anyone really saying anything. So I was like, right, I'm going to go start setting up in the morning when I get in before everyone. I'm going to go set up and sit in the main office area. And so that way now coaches started coming to me and asking me questions a little bit more frequently. So I made myself more visible to them and present. And I'd say that's one of the big ones is leaders being available and present. But then staff and coaches who are working with them, just don't be afraid to ask a question. Because they, as you mentioned, they want to help you. They want to see your club succeed. And when everyone's pointing the same direction with the most information as possible, it's going to make that the smoothest process. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions, because I was sitting there at 9:00 on a Friday night getting ready for an 8 a.m. kickoff. Like, how do I get this paperwork done? And just I was so stressed at that time, man. It was ridiculous. I also had to record something for my license. I think it was the pre-match report, and I had a bunch of 8-year-olds. And I'm just like, this is going to be crazy morning once I get all this paperwork figured out.
Well, I'm going to flip it a little bit. What is one of the biggest challenges that not maybe you're facing, but club directors, club leadership are facing? What's one of the biggest challenges? Because, I stepped away from more of a club leadership role because I really wanted to just indulge in my teams and give them everything that I could. Not saying that anything was wrong with my leadership. My leadership at my club right now is amazing. I feel so supported. It's awesome. But what's one thing that club directors and leadership, what's one of the biggest, hardest challenges that they're facing or you're facing right now?
Having more time in the day some days. Because you could start, working at 8:00 in the morning, and you could be going till 9 p.m. at night between emails, between small conversations, meetings, and then going out to a training session. But obviously we can't solve that one of adding more time in the day. But for me, it's staying organized is definitely a tough one, and being able to prepare more than a month out. So for me, that organizational side of, once you're hitting December, you need to be almost thinking about that next season. I'm not talking about winter. I'm not talking about spring. I'm talking about your next fall season. You need to be thinking and planning for that because it's going to be right around the corner. Um, we were talking about tryouts. Our tryouts happen over the winter. So like for us, we pretty much get back in the winter. It's a straight hustle until June. And like this year, it seems like it was a blink of the eye and it was gone. So I feel like organization and structures is the two biggest things, because when you're organized, it then leaves less room for you'd have to solve problems later on. Hopefully they're smaller things, questions, or you have a small issue come up in your club, you guys can tackle because you're not focused on those next couple months. You're already set for it. Like, so I'd say that's the biggest thing is you need to be the one that's planning ahead even further than what your coaching staff or your individual people are thinking about. Like I already know we pretty much have everything through the summer up until November set for next year. And so that way now coaches have the information. They're able to then reiterate the information to their parents of, hey, we're going to have these 2 tournaments in the fall season. This is the league that we're going to be playing in. If you give all that information, then you have to answer so many less questions. I'm sure when you were a director or in leadership role, it was like you get random emails from parents on clubs. And one of the things that we set down as a structure about 3 years ago was kind of a system of how you reach out to people in the club, right? Because some parents immediately, we are in a pay to play sport. Some of them just want that answer from, the highest person available at the club. Well, that question or whatever concern was involved the coach. So we've set out is essentially like, if you have questions or concerns, work with your coach first. They're the person who sees your player all the time. They know you guys. We want that coach to have that first contact with you. If whatever problem or question isn't able to be resolved with them, then we have another step up, which is your phase lead, and they're split up by game format. So we have a 77, a 99, an 11-11, and then we also do have a high school one to kind of split up that age group. So it's not one person's literally taking care of U13 through U18. That'd be a lot of teams. So we have a phase lead, and then above that we have our directors, and then above that we have obviously our executive. But that structure now help give parents kind of a clear process to follow and how they should reach out, and it's being also firm with it as well. Of if I was a phase lead and I got an email about this coach is not giving my kid the playing time that I think they should get. Well, instead of me starting to solve that problem, I just go, hey, did you have the conversation with that coach on there? And then going back to leadership being involved and supportive of coaches, it would be me then reaching out to that coach of like, hey, do you want help with this conversation? I'm not sure if you have the resources or skills to really approach it and be direct and positive within it. So I want to make sure that coach has those resources available. And like I've sat on calls with parents and coaches before to support coaches, because I'm sure you've had some interesting conversations with parents when they come frustrated, upset about something. And at the end of the day, I know what they're usually trying to protect is their best interest. That's their child. So a lot of the times when I have those personal conversations, I try and make sure they understand, like, I'm here for your kid as well. I just we don't share the same last name. I am their coach, but like I want what's best for your kid, and I want to give them all the opportunities I can. But we're in the same boat here. So like that's something I've definitely helped out with coaches getting into those calls of being like, we're invested in that child. So and that makes that conversation a lot easier.
Yeah. Um, the main reason I ask you those questions and these questions is more to understand that club leadership is there to help.
Hmm.
There's a lot of I don't know how to say it, misinterpretation that club leadership aren't, they're just there for money and stuff like that. And every person I've spoke to in club leadership in a role in that way has always said the same thing as you just said. To round that up, was like, I'm here for your kid, and I want to help them. So the biggest reason, like I said, I asked you that is for more clarification of like, hey, look, more reinforcement. Like, we are here for you, and your kid, and we're here for coach support. That's why I always brought that up, is to support the coaches and give them what they need. But at the end of the day, it's all about the player. So, last question for you, because I really do respect your time. Other than you calling out the beard, I had someone I watched this on YouTube that said that I had too much of a baby face and I need to grow a beard. So with you saying like all of these people walk around with great beards, it's making me like feel a little bit self-conscious. But I always ask the final question. What is one piece of advice that you'd give a brand new coach? So someone who's maybe come in your club, someone who's that Ryan that came in and is coaching, that wanted to coach, help them, maybe their brother team, their sibling team, whatever it is. What's one bit of advice you would give them as they start their journey?
Make as many mistakes as you can. And I'm not talking about like just poor, negligent mistakes. Try something out and reflect on it. One of the first years I was coaching, I was really focused on the management of the game and things like that. Um, and one of the coaches noticed like I never really changed my system or my structure during a lot of those games. And he's like, "Oh man, you're really disciplined, and like you don't challenge yourself." Or it wasn't that you don't challenge yourself. He was like, "You're really disciplined. You really want the kids to have that long term development of playing within this system." And I was like, I never realized that someone else looked and just was like, "Well, he's not changing the formation because he." So after that, I was like, well, why do I not ever change the formation? And it could just be uh, the pitch size that we're on, because I'm sure you've gone to some very narrow, skinny ones. You've gone to some massive, wide open ones. Um, and like I never really had thought about that. I was like, all right, 77. It was a 1-2-3-1. I was like, yep, we're gonna learn this system. And so I realized that it was because I still was growing in that area, being like, hey, what are the pros and cons of running different structures and shapes that we have? Of what it would mean for the kids learning as well as their success on a given day. So I started thinking about how can I be more flexible within my own coaching and not be afraid to set up in a different formation. Which after that, I think it was 4 years later, I had a really good group of 2007 girls that I had, and we played a 3-5-2, and no one else played like that. And it was because I was like, I needed to solve a problem. I wasn't able to hold up a ball with a solo forward during that time. So I was like, how can I change that? And there were a few different shapes that we went through. I brought back the old 4-4-2 at one moment. It didn't really work for them because we didn't have numbers in the midfield. So I was like, all right, what other things can I do? And we played a 3-5-2. But I challenged myself in those times to step outside my comfort zone of like, I know how I grew up playing a 4-4-2. I'm not sure about yourself. And I think in high school, we had like a 4-2-3-1. And like, so I knew those systems and like, I felt comfortable, but then I started challenging myself with how can I grow, with doing different things with shapes and structures, and how can I try and analyze them as much as possible? So I stepped outside my comfort zone. I tried to make some mistakes in those moments where there was definitely maybe a game or two where the structure of the system was like, all right, this isn't working, and I'll revert to something, whether it be in the first half or once I get to halftime. But I wasn't afraid for those opportunities to be mistakes, and it really helped me grow and start seeing a lot more of the game that wasn't exposing myself to, and I was the main person holding myself back from that. So when I heard that kind of comment from that coach, I was just like, okay, that you said that, and I don't think he meant it to be the way I interpreted it, but I looked at it and I was just like, I need to grow, I need to learn, I need to be ready to make mistakes. And that was one way that I started doing it. And now I look at different shapes and structures, and you know, how do they give pros and cons about different fields, different player ability that I have. Now I feel like I can just go into any team and it's like, I can find you guys success by at least putting you in the right shape and player positions, but it took mistakes to get there. And it's definitely not one season of mistakes. You got to do a few of them because then you get a lot more wealth of knowledge from those ones.
I love that you brought 442 up, because the first couple of years coaching here at Cedar Valley High School, I had a coach after the second year, same kind of thing that you said. He'd come up to me and he was like, I love playing against you. Like, you played a 442 really well. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And to me, it was the same kind of thing. Like, I was so predictable. Like, it was like they knew what was coming. They knew I was playing two tall forwards. You know, we were playing a little bit more direct, and it forced me to be like, okay, like that's something I always talk to some coaches about. I'm like, hey, what system do you play? And they're like, well, we can't play a 3-5-2. Like, why? Why can't you play a 3-5-2? Well, you know, we just can't. We don't have this, we don't have this. And I was like, well, have you tried it? Have you tried doing this? Because the more and more, and you've done this, the more and more you're exposed to high level soccer, it's a chess match. You're changing players, you're moving things around. You said like, hey, I need that midfield. You're gonna go 3-5-2, and I might change something to, maybe go 3v3 at the back against your three. Like, it's something that people don't think about, and I love that you said make mistakes, because you're gonna have to make those mistakes, because you're gonna go home sometimes and cry, because you're gonna be like, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. But then
I made that. I can't believe I made that mistake, but you get over it, and you got another game, you got another training session, and then I feel like from messing with my formations, it helped me then grow within my coaching within training sessions, because I was like, I need to not prepare my team for a shape. I need to prepare my team to play a game and read and understand the game. And that took me in a whole nother level of my coaching development, where it was like, I'm not sure about you, but I got really bored with seeing college soccer and a lot of the higher level soccer of it being those channel ball runs of whip the ball out wide to the corner and have some pacey kid come in and whipping across. And it was like, that's not how I see the game. I see the game of being able to break down the team in multiple ways. If I can't play through the middle, I'm going to play around you. If I can't play around you, I'm going to play over you. And giving those kids those resources. So now it wasn't just, I have these two players, can we hit them, play off of them? Now it's, what does the game dictate of where we can play and where we can't play? And how can we then take advantage of those moments in the game? Once I stopped focusing so much on me being safe and doing those things, I was like, let's make mistakes. Let's absolutely get this wrong. I think I did a 7v7 game with one center back one time, and the kids and the parents were kind of like looking at me. And then we did it again in the spring season, and we actually had a lot of success with it. Because the two center mids started. Now it was a 1-4-1. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, one in the goalie as well. But like, the parents were just like, this is wild. I'm like, yeah, I just want the kids to focus on attack today. I don't care about defending. This is 7v7. If we're all going to be upset that we lose this game today at 7v7, why are we going to continue playing the game until high school, until college? A kid gets into a professional level. It's not the World Cup. Like, want the kids to have fun. And that was one way the kids were like, man, we scored a lot of goals, but we also got scored on it quite a bit too. But it made them think a little bit differently about the game.
No, that's one of my favorite stories from one of my friends. He said he said they couldn't get out there on half. So his second half, he said, "All right, girls, how many times can we get 10 players in their half, this half?" And I remember him saying he said he kept they kicked the ball down, and all of a sudden 10 players would run into the other half, and it just it's funny because you do see goals and these things happen, but like it helps teach the kids as well. Like, hey, this is a part of the game. Like, get the ball forward and get up, and then keep them in the half. So, no, Ryan, I really want to appreciate and thank you for jumping on. I know time is very valuable, and like I said, your insight is so cool. So thanks for spending the time, dude. I so appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaches Conversations, presented by the Coaching Index. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a coach, parent, or player who may benefit from it. For more coaching insights, resources, articles, and future conversations, follow us on Instagram at the Coaching Index. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making an impact.